Team 6, and I'm Michelle.
I'm Emily.
I'm Sean.
I'm Daniel.
So today we're going to be talking about Chapter 3 in the Principles of Management book.
This is about managing diversity in a global environment.
Which includes standards of living and the effects of foreign trade.
And we'll be discussing mostly of how it'll affect us when we leave here and how it affects people who are already in the workforce.
So business in the global environment is generally when companies are communicating with companies in another country or like exporting goods.
We're talking a lot about the difference between domestic companies and multinational corporations because domestic businesses only conduct business in one country and multinational corporations are involved in many different countries.
We're also discussing how this affects people on the small scale, say like family, interpersonal relationships, as well as relationships at the workplace, and how our differences between cultures affects our views.
And I'd like to start off this entire group talk basically asking everyone individually how they have experiences out there in the world already, because some of us have already had jobs. So we want to know what's like, have you faced discrimination anywhere? Have you been in any kind of job that you've noticed like differences in different states? Have you moved around a bit and seen differences in that?
I've only worked in one state, but I have noticed that when working in a doctor's office, I was the youngest person there, and they would frequently think that I would not know what I was doing, but I had been most recently trained, so I intended to know more than they did.
So that was a case of ageism. So they judged you based on your
Age and
age.
experience.
Okay.
Slight discrimination. Nothing that a couple of years won't fix. I mean, let's be real. Look at the hang of that.
Nothing that mattered for a temporary job.
Emily?
I've only had small summer jobs, nothing large.
Same. Yeah.
So
I've only worked in, Jiffy Lube Live, amphitheaters business, and then roofing companies, and that's not exactly a big business. My business was a small one, localized.
I've only worked fast food jobs before, so
yeah.
Servers get crap, I know that.
yeah.
What kind? What fast food?
Burger King, Domino's, Little Caesars, Food Lion. I've worked stocking jobs at like Dollar Store, and I've also worked Panera.
Well, your fast food experience can relate to our discussion of multinational corporations because the book gave a good example about McDonald's.
It did, I remember reading that. What was it, in Spain or something, that McDonald's is like, the workers are treated worse than they're here? I didn't.
Oh, I did not know that. But we talked about how they sell the same foods like the Big Mac, but
They're very different in every country. Like, when I went to France, they were just not the same. Like, people were like, buying fresh beef, and they were like preparing it on the spot. They weren't like having frozen patties and such like that. And there's also a difference in how people perceive fast food. So McDonald's in France is considered like to be a very like up class, like fun event to go to, but yet they'll mock Americans for eating it.
To add to Michelle's point, in some places such as the Vatican or Rome, Italy, McDonald's is actually considered luxurious because they have marble floors.
Ooh.
In addition to that, if you go to India and go to their McDonald's, a lot of their food is very spicy, themed to the Indian cuisine.
I wish our McDonald's were like that, jeez.
and also in India they don't have beef burgers, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Religious
For
purposes,
cultural
religious purposes,
differences,
yeah.
which is another thing discussed in this book, how the corporations have to.
All across the world, corporations differ in accordance to how the people live and how their culture grew up.
And related to that, the management strategies have to be formulated to fit the people who are working there rather than just a universal standard for every country.
Oh crap, we already got into the workplace diversification. All right, so let's see here. Emily, what did you say earlier about, sorry, Sean, you
Yes.
said that, about the diversity in India. You said they have spicy foods, right?
Yes, there is a big interest in spicy food, like curry, and a lot of spicy chicken as well.
And, okay, so let's say a company outside of the food industry. How exactly are those going to differ from world to world? I know we discussed it in here, but let's say it's a shipping company. How's that going to differ from any kind of company in America? America?
Well, if per se McDonald's brought their food that was segmented for India over to America, it probably wouldn't do as well because that food is much more familiar with the country as well as the people with it in India. But they could send out, let's say, special limited time offers
I got you.
and try to see if they're hit or miss within the community. Either testing it at larger population densities, such as, let's say, California, or much more conservative, more traditional places, let's say, like a Chinatown, but with Indian people there.
I got you.
Going specifically with your shipping example, a company that just transports goods and if they're just like ordering from, like, say, manufacturers in America and they're expecting to sell the same things in other countries, they might be surprised when they get there. And we use a lot more gas than, say, Britain does because there just aren't that many cars.
I think we lost our way. Is that over?
So
No, really.
we also need to discuss trade barriers, which is a big thing in managing foreign trade. There are different examples of things that hinder foreign trade, such as embargoes,
Tariffs.
Taxes.
Screw taxes.
Okay.
Something that helps it, though, is the World Trade Organization, which they deal with countries being treated unfairly. And
Their main goal is to enable trade like globally that without any like hindrance or like saying, oh no, I don't want to trade with that country, and like allowing everyone who wants to trade with each other to be able to.
important for countries to get along when doing business together.
I kind of hit on later in the book when I was talking about the inclusion, how America is better at it, I think, just because there's already multiple races here. But I know other countries, they still face discrimination in a lot of the workplaces just because, like in India, it's a majority Indian people, and in Europe, it's mostly Caucasian. And America is the only place with a lot of diversity, but at the same time, America is always getting tons of reports or complaints about racism or discrimination of any kind of gender or whatever in the workplace. And they hit that a lot, actually, later in the book.
Yeah, let's talk about diversity and inclusion in the workplace.
Absolutely.
Inclusion was mentioned a lot, saying that it's designed so that people feel like they belong, feel respected, and feel supported by everyone. I think like we all related to this also for group work because we've talked about it a lot, making sure that everyone's comfortable working together so that they get their work done well and efficiently and
On time.
successfully. Mm-hmm.
Another topic with diversity is discrimination, which is when someone, possibly an employer, says or thinks differently of you for any part of who you are, including race or gender or age, and they decide to treat you differently or not hire you, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Ethnocentrism. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Ethnocentrism, basically, is when you have a very narrowed viewpoint from your own mind. You think your race is generally the more knowledgeable. You only trust people who are more of your race. So you are majority white, and I'm guessing you would probably be more likely, subconsciously mind you, not always on purpose, to choose someone or to work with someone who looks more like you, who talks and acts more like you do. And that's not exactly racist, but we should try to work on breaking that, because by breaking that, we can include other people who can bring in new aspects to the job, or if it's a group project like this, they can bring in new ideas that we wouldn't have thought of because we just didn't think like they did.
And definitely all of that is true, but a lot of ethnocentrism isn't about race, but it's also about culture, which is very, very tied into race. But like, say, Americans are not going to view the same thing as just Europeans, even if they both are majority white. But we think very much as self-serving and like, ooh, I want to do anything to like get what I want. But in European countries, there are a lot more like, goal-oriented things that have nothing to do with yourself.
It's very important to avoid thinking that way, especially in international business.
I feel like especially nowadays, because ever since they've been getting the reports for Awesome. I wasn't expecting the blink screen to pop up. All right. So as I was saying, the discrimination in America became a much bigger deal because back in, I want to say, the early 1900s to the late 1900s, they only really enforced not being discriminative if it was blatantly obvious. But today, they've worked on it so that, like, even when it's not like almost completely straight up in front of your face, they can look into it in case someone's being like bullied behind the company's back or something.
And that's why there's like HR, because you can like take a complaint privately and have it addressed so that you're still in an uncomfortable work environment without causing issues like very broad in the company.
Oh, sure. We're on the final section already?
Yeah, I think the final thing that we want to focus on today was the cultural diversity in companies and how people work in different businesses, relating to Geert Hofstede's and the Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness Scale, how different countries, employees in different countries work in these work-related values such as assertiveness, power distance, gender differences, performance orientation. It's very interesting to see the differences between countries.
Another big difference that's seen among countries is communication. So like in America, our language uses a lot of the I's. So we think, I want to do this, I want to do that. But in Asian cultures, the language does not include the word for I. It has a we, but because of that, the thinking is very different. So to motivate employees, you're not going to be saying, I expect this of you. You're going to be saying, we want to do this, and this is how we can achieve this.
They're more collectivistic.
And that's seen in this chart where it says, like, China, for example, is really high in in-group collectivism.
And so is Japan.
I always felt like that was a plus and a downside for Americans, honestly, because we're always raised to think outside the box and act out against something that's like going on. We're always told to act and be out there and be individualistic, but at the same time, we have to realize that sometimes it's okay to conform and work as a group towards the same goal. Because if you work as an individual, like if we all worked individually on the same group project, we would never get the work done.
And we'd never know what each other is doing, and we'd all be trying to succeed personally, but not as a group.
Exactly.
Counterintuitive.
So these are all things I think we need to remember, especially when we're talking about international business, because you need to remember that other cultures and there's differences in the world that you don't realize and you need to think about.
I think the biggest thing to take from this is that ethnocentrism is very, very apparent in how everyone behaves, and that by being aware of it, you can limit it.
Solid. All right.
The best way to decrease barriers is just to travel, expose yourself to new people.
Open minds.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for listening to us ramble about Chapter 3.
Thanks for watching.
Hopefully it helped